Hey everyone, today we're going to look at how to make buttons on GameMaker using the GUI layers. So we're going to be able to make basically sprite buttons and text buttons like these. Now before we start, I'm going to explain why I use the GUI layer instead of objects. First of all, later it's going to be a lot easier to import these buttons in a project that uses the GUI layer for UI elements like health, menus and stuff like that. Also for me, it avoids having hundreds of objects for different kinds of buttons, and it just keeps everything simple. So basically how it works is actually pretty simple. It's all in a single script, so you won't need to put variables in the create event or step event. Afterwards, you put in an if statement so you can check the mouse collision and such. And in that if statement, you're going to be able to put all your code that you'll be needing. Like this one here where you can change the color of the text. So now comes the actual script. Basically, firstly we're going to start by making all the variables that we're going to be needing. x1, x2, y1, and y2 are the bounding boxes of the actual button. Mouse x and mouse y, which checks the device mouse x to GUI, is the mouse position. Now why do I use this function here? It's because sometimes the canvas of the GUI isn't the same as the canvas as the actual game. Now here we have a simple var selected false, just so we could have the switch. Here we check the actual width of the string and the height. This is pretty simple, string height, argument 2, which is referencing to the string. And this is the simple code that we use to get the bounding box of the button. First of all, x1 is the normal coordinate of the text, same as with y1. And then for x2, we add the width of the string to x1 to find the length, same as with the y2, we add the height instead of the width. And this is where we check the collision of the mouse with the button. Here we have the positions of the mouse in the GUI, and here is the bounding box for the actual button. You draw the text, and then you return the selected, so you can have the script return true or false. Now for the sprite button, it's actually pretty much the same thing. We put the script in an if statement, and then we put it again if you want to change the colors or change the position, however you want it. But in our case, we don't need to put the script again, because when you draw it in the game, it already scales alone, like this. Now for the code for this script, it's pretty much the same, but the calculations for the positions of the bounding box is a little bit more complex, as sprites have origins, and that can complicate things when you want to change the origin of the button. So skipping the variables, as we already know what they are: sprite, subimage, x and y, scale and alpha, basically your usual stuff. We have the width and height calculation, but instead of the string, it's a sprite. And then we have the x and y offset, which will give you the distance of the origin to the top left corner of your sprite. And then we want to find the middle of the sprite. So basically, we do width divided by 2 and height divided by 2, minus their offset. And why do we do minus the offset? Because remember, sometimes your origin of the sprite isn't exactly in the middle of the sprite. So by minusing this, we actually get the top left corner of the sprite and not the origin of the sprite. And then we have the actual calculation of the bounding box. These are a little bit different than the string calculations, since you want to get the middle of the sprite. For this, I'm not going to explain in depth what exactly it is, but I'm pretty sure you can guess what it does. Now we use the same point and rectangle function. We do the same thing, the only difference is we up the scale by 0.25. But when you hover over the sprite, it'll get a little bit bigger. Go down here and draw your sprite, but over here it's very important that you do minus the x mid and minus y mid as we did up here, or else the scaling and the position of the bounding box will not be correct. Now what's fun about these scripts is you can make multiple variations of them. For example, in my project for the text button, I have one that changes color without actually needing to draw set color outside of the script. And for the sprite button, I also have a variant that changes the sub image of the sprite without changing it outside of the script. I'm also going to be putting these scripts on my Patreon in all the different variations that I have. So if you're interested in supporting me and in getting the code directly, you could support me on Patreon, and it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for watching, and I hope this was helpful for you.